Hello, everyone. My name is Darren Clark, and I'm the Managing Director of Succeed with Dyslexia. And we have another incredible guest with you today. Please, it'd be fantastic if you could just introduce yourself and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself.
I'm Tom Hunt. I'm a Member of Parliament for Ipswich. I'm also on the Education Select Committee. But I'm a very passionate advocate for on special educational needs, partly because I have dyslexia and dyspraxia myself, and so have some sort of lived experience, having dyslexia. And when I was, I struggled at school. When I was 12, I had reading and writing age of an 8-year-old. Got diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia when I was a 12-year-old, which was I was quite lucky. I mean, ideally, it would have been before then, but bearing in mind that such a large number of people never get diagnosed, or they get diagnosed well into their adulthood, I was probably quite lucky. And it was really only after I got diagnosed I got the support that I needed, and I started to turn things around and ended up being quite successful academically. So I'm very passionate, to raise awareness of dyslexia and dyspraxia, and to get more support for those for people with dyslexia and dyspraxia at every level. I mean, obviously at school, but also adults.
Absolutely. And you touched on the fact that you were kind of, your journey with dyslexia. And we know kind of with dyslexia, we talk kind of neurodiversity is a whole. With dyslexia, they say statistically that people with dyslexia may have other forms with regards to kind of dyslexia. I'm dyslexic myself and have ADHD. And then there's dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and so on. So it can be a little bit of a minefield, can't it, to try and kind of, when you look at diagnosing people, what basis, how it kind of encroaches into kind of other areas. You mentioned that you were diagnosed at 12, which I know I've read some of your incredible work and the articles that you've done, and you've mentioned that that's quite late on in a child's education. And I was diagnosed very late on, at the age of 36, so it was very late on. But even at 12, what was those kind of years prior to that? What did they kind of look like prior to the diagnosis, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, I just really struggled. So in class, I just would be behind other people when it came to understanding things, getting my head around different things.
Yes.
Almost whatever the subject was. I really didn't do well in big groups. And I just couldn't really understand why it was that I was being so much slower than everybody else when it came to getting my head around things. Yeah. Often when I did get my head around something, it would properly slot in, and I'd be really quite good at it, but it would take me longer to get my head around it. I was sort of just not doing very well academically. Most of my focus was probably on sport. I was quite liked my football and things like that, and I just never thought I was going to be successful academically. And it led to a certain level of frustration and sort of sometimes anger, because I kind of felt that there was kind of intelligence there, and there was the ability deep down somewhere within me to do well academically, but for whatever reason, it wasn't manifesting itself.
Yes.
And I think a lot of this goes down to the fact that if you've got dyslexia, dyspraxia, or another type of neurodiverse sort of condition, your brain's just wired a bit differently, and you process information a bit differently. Yeah. So I think it's, the old notion, and as challenging as things have been for me, I'm pretty convinced my dad, who's in his 70s now, also has dyslexia and dyspraxia, but he was never told that he did. And there's a lot of people like him and who were at school were just made to feel like they were thick, when actually they're not. They're just, the brain's wired a bit differently. So so I think it's about trying to create an education system that is sensitive to the fact that not everybody's the same. Not everybody processes information in the same way. So we have to have, that diagnosis really early on, to firstly, so we know what we're dealing with in terms of what different conditions or disabilities people have. Yes. And then at that point, we've got to start putting a lot of effort into catering to those individuals and making sure that we can promote ways of learning that are conducive to their needs.
Absolutely, and I concur. And going back to when you mentioned, a family member with dyslexia, it's been a bit of a journey for myself, going back kind of throughout the family tree, so to speak, and kind of understanding, because they do say it's some reports say that it is hereditary in that sense. So it's and I remember kind of looking back, I'm thinking, I'm 46, looking back at my kind of dad's years, that wasn't being diagnosed with dyslexia in his age, kind of the genre wasn't kind of heard upon. It's interesting when you say about the educational system. For me, I was undiagnosed throughout the whole kind of school, the primary school and the secondary school, high school, if we're looking, speaking to our people in the States. And that was a real struggle for me. And I think it was probably down to the lack of knowledge of some of the teachers that how to kind of help and assist and to check. Did you kind of notice that it wasn't the willingness to them not to be able to teach you, it's sometimes didn't have the tools or the knowledge to be able to help? Did you find that at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was probably only a very small minority of teachers who ever taught me who were uncaring and unsympathetic. I think most of the ones were aware that I was a bit different, but just, as you say, didn't always have the knowledge and the understanding to help as much as they might have wanted to. Yeah. As it was, I ended up having a very good specialist support teacher. And when I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia, when I was 12 and I was at reading writing age of an 8-year-old, they took me out of French. And when my peers were doing French, I was getting one-to-one support, and I was fortunate enough to have somebody there with a very good understanding of dyslexia and dyspraxia. And then over a period of time, I was able to catch up. But I think that we do need to look at things like teacher training. Yes, we want great Senkos, we want great learning support assistants, we want great specialists, but I think ensuring that every teacher has a certain kind of base level understanding when it comes to all these different types of learning disabilities, I think is important, because I have spoken to a number of teachers since I was elected who are passionate to try and make a difference here and want to know more, but they're honest with me and say, look, their level of understanding isn't as good as they'd like it to be, often because. So I think teacher training I think is very important to make sure that there is that understanding, that appreciation, and a sensitivity to the fact that not all of us not all brains are wired in the same way, and difference when it comes to that doesn't mean that you're less good or more good. It just means you're different.
And I feel, you said, growing up, going to school, you had a kind of a love of sports. And I guess that was the kind of the way that you can kind of express yourself in that sense, because maybe you were struggling in some of the key subjects, maybe, English, math, science, and so on. And because, I know going back to my kind of school days, I felt there was a big restriction in the way that I had to learn something. And in sports, for me, I could be a lot freer because it was just, it was physical, and it was just something that you can relate to, because again, having that element of interest. With regards to the educational system, and I completely, I concur with you with the sense of saying that we need more teacher and more training side of it. But as we completely know, this takes a lot of kind of cost and a lot of time, to kind of facilitate that. Where do you see where we could really kind of help the educational system, from now onwards, really?
But I do think, though, that if we're going to seriously improve special educational need provision, there is going to have to be a lot of extra funding. And I've, not all of there are many ways in which we can improve special educational needs provision that isn't all money related, but a lot of it is to do with funding. And, most of the most powerful interventions that I've seen have been resource intensive. So I have regularly called for more money to go into special educational needs, and I've made the point to the Treasury that this needs to be seen as an investment, not just money spent.
Yeah,
because we know that dyslexics, and we're doing a on the education committee at the moment. We're doing prison education inquiry.
Wonderful.
And, it's come out like how such a high proportion of those who are in prison have got learning disabilities. And I think that gives us a bit of a sense is if this isn't just getting special educational needs provision right, isn't just, obviously it's primarily about, fairness and, to the individuals and the families to make sure that they can achieve their full potential. But this is also of great societal benefit because, we want to utilise the talents and the abilities of those who've got learning disabilities and who are often, more often than not unconventional thinkers, often creative thinkers. But ultimately, that's a good thing, the potential. But sadly, we often see that if we don't get that support right, then those individuals can go off in completely the wrong direction and can end up in the criminal justice system. So I think that there's a stat about dyslexics that I think Matt Hancock, when he was introducing the 10-minute rule bill, I think it was that like about 50% of those in prison have got dyslexia or something like that. Yeah. But then about 60% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. It's about, I think that gives us a bit of a sense as to how high the stakes are. So you get special educational needs support right, then you can unlock great talent, great potential. Get it wrong, and they often, so there doesn't seem to be much in between.
It's a very fine line, isn't it? It's such a balance within that because we do hear about dyslexic entrepreneurs. They can kind of reel off the most famous ones and that side of it. But like you said, there is a real kind of a divide in that sense as well, and a fine balance. I guess when we look at kind of entrepreneurs, when we're talking to children in schools, we're saying, you could be the next Richard Branson, and we're never saying that a child can't have dreams and ambitions and work hard and become the next Richard Branson, so to speak. But sometimes when we're teaching a child in the school, it's sometimes they find it difficult to concentrate in lessons or even take what's being come off the board or write down. So it's these small steps that to build on the confidence and the support the individual to then be able, to do, some of the basic stuff using that terminology.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. But I think it's, I think often, it's difficult for me, because I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic. I'll be lying if I told you that I am totally all over what is dyslexia and what is dyspraxia in terms of how it manifests itself in me. Completely. I can see I've got various dyslexic and dyspraxic traits.
Yes.
But sometimes I'm not sure whether it's a dyspraxia or whether it's a dyslexia that's showing through. Yeah. But I think a lot of us we're not linear thinkers. So we don't, I think dyspraxics certainly don't seem to be linear thinkers. So they're not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Often they read books in a different order. They seek to get the big picture first, and then fill in the blanks afterwards. And I know that's what I always seek to get big picture first, and then I kind of fill in the detail afterwards. I'm not particularly very good with process. I'm not good at, I was very old before I could tie my shoelaces and do a tie and things like that, because it's steps and sequences, which I struggle with. And I think that's in a way when I'm probably at my worst is when I'm in large groups. If I'm in like a large group of like 30 people, and the focus of that group is to like teach a particular process. So you say to those 30 people, I'm going to teach you a brand new process involving loads of different steps. Then you can bet your money that I'll be like one of the 1 or 2 who will be like, what is going on? And, people won't understand it. And they'll be like, what is wrong with him? Is he like, is he, and a number of times, that's so it's over. The older I've got a better understanding of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, which has probably been quite helpful.
And you're absolutely right. And I guess it's spreading that awareness to people to understand how, again, for me, with regards to, dyslexic, ADHD, I'm sure there's dyspraxia, dyscalculia. I'm sure there's elements of all these different things. For me, I'm a very social person, but then when I'm in a crowd, it's very difficult if I'm there for a long duration, because then I need to kind of, escape the noise and everything that's going on. I tend to put headphones in, listen to classical music, almost kind of recenter myself, and then be able, to go again. And it's kind of that noise and the buzz, although I crave it sometimes, when I have it for long periods, I have to retreat. to have that. If I could just touch quickly just on Mr. Hancock. Matt Hancock's done doing some incredible stuff with regards to work with dyslexia and the bill that he's putting out. How would you see that going? Would you like to see that going forward within the educational? I know you're very passionate in helping to get more kind of Senkos in, but also the real kind of teaching. What would good look like if we were to kind of move forward with that?
Well, I think that it's first I'd say it's very good that Matt Hancock is been so active and has come forward with this 10-minute rule bill about diagnosing all children in primary school for dyslexia. I mean, I've been very passionate about this issue since I was elected, but having somebody, now that Matt's not a Secretary of State, he's obviously got more freedom with regards to particular campaigns that he feels passionate about. And it's really, good that, he's and obviously with he's been in the game a lot longer than I've been. So he's got a certain level of experience when it comes to how to run these sorts of successful campaigns in Parliament, and very so he's chosen the right campaign, I think.
Yeah.
And he's after had its hearing in Parliament, he was in the Department for Education with the Secretary of State talking about it, and I'm hopefully we're going to find out more soon about whether the government might be willing to come to the table. But I mean, ultimately, I think, if you're going to do diagnosing for dyslexia, the first question I'm getting from many people is, well, why can't you diagnose other things as well? Yeah. So my view is obviously it's a big step forward to make sure that every young child is diagnosed for dyslexia. But I think if there's a way of when you're trying to diagnose for dyslexia, if you can do other things at the same time, and that probably make if you could do it do it all in once, just diagnose for learning disabilities generally. Yeah. So yes, you're screening for dyslexia, but you're also screening for dyspraxia and autism and attention deficit disorder and things like that. You may as well just do it all in one.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's being raised and talked about on such a a global scale, really, when we look at it, it's fantastic that it's been brought to the conversation. And I know I've been kind of working on talking to people over the past kind of 10 years around dyslexia, and I just feel over the past couple of years when we have people who has those kind of voices to be able to speak and bring it especially up in Parliament is only going to be a great thing for the future of helping with regards to neurological differences within that. But I just want to say a massive thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day today. It's been absolutely incredible speaking to you, and I wish you the very best in all the incredible work that you're doing. And if people wanted to kind of to get in touch or to try and help with what you're doing within the work that you're doing, how would they be able to get in touch with your Parliament? Really, not
best thing is to contact me at tom.hunt.mp@parliament.uk. Just drop me an email, and then you'll be able to share your views with me, and potentially have a chat.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your day, and we wish you the very best, and we'll be in touch very, very soon. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch that interview. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did putting it together. Now, we have another fantastic interview for you to watch. Please do check out this interview where we spoke to Phyllis, who is the co-founder of the Rare Gem Talent School in Kenya, in Nairobi. Now, they are doing phenomenal work to help children with dyslexia in Kenya. Please do check out the video. Let us know in the comments what you think of it, and thank you as always for your support. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.